In today's money, I do believe that Bitcoin could potentially reach a price of $4 to $5 million per Bitcoin.
Hello and welcome back to AIBC Summit YouTube channel. We're here to bring you news on all things blockchain and crypto. So if you are a fan of the space and you want to learn that little bit more, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Now joining me on the line, I have The Moon, Carl, from the popular YouTube channel The Moon. And we're here to take a look at Bitcoin price predictions and what we can expect from the future of Bitcoin. So Carl, taking a look at the markets, we saw global markets bounce back and a retracement on Monday. We saw European stocks up around 2% on Tuesday. But I want to ask you about all things crypto. How are we seeing the crypto markets at the moment?
So in terms of crypto, we are used to more volatile swings. So crypto has also been down simultaneously as when the stock market started to come down. And I mean, if you look at the bigger, broader spectrum, I think it's very obvious that Bitcoin is in an uptrend, both on the weekly time frame and on the monthly time frame. It is only on the daily where Bitcoin had a small little slump from 10,000 down to the lows we had just like a couple of days ago. But I think that, the volatility is something that we're used to in the crypto space. And I think that Bitcoin is still looking healthy as of right now.
There's definitely a difference between crypto traders and I think major traditional stock traders. This week we seem to be a lot more calm and a lot more relaxed. Because you were right in saying that there was a retracement back from 10K, slightly down to around 8,500. When we look at these kind of retracements in the market, is this something where we were surprised that Bitcoin, which sometimes could be considered a safe haven asset, how it reacted in the last week?
Yeah, so exactly. The narrative that we are used to in crypto is that Bitcoin will work as a safe haven and will be a hedge against the global markets, which means that if the S&P were to fall 5%, then we would expect Bitcoin to go up a couple of percent as a result of that. Basically people would leave stocks to go into crypto, just as historically people have used gold as a hedge against stocks. However, something that I've actually been talking about on my channel is that I believe that in the first initial stage of the coming financial crisis, I think it's possible that crypto as a whole will go down in the initial stages of the financial crisis, because I think that in the initial panic stage, people will want to go away from risk. And Bitcoin is still seen as a risky asset in the eyes of the mainstream and in the bigger investors. So people will book profits, take profits, and basically try to go away from risk as much as possible. And I think the obvious first-hand choice for most people is cash. And cash and potentially gold. I think that Bitcoin is going to need some time until it is seen at that as this ultimate safe haven. But I do believe that in the mid-term, in the long term, when we look at the global markets and the potential financial crisis, I believe that the fundamentals of Bitcoin will become inevitable and undeniable, because Bitcoin has this limited supply of 21 million. And the whole problem with the macro or the whole financial system right now is that central banks can actually print money and lower interest rates based on their monetary policy, and they can basically manipulate the supply of currency. And this is something that is just not possible with Bitcoin. So if this current monetary system starts to show its flaws and show its weakness, because of this central authority being able to print money, then I think it's obvious that people are going to look for assets that are unprintable, money that is not inflatable. And gold is, of course, a good choice because gold has very low inflation and controlled inflation. But there will always be an inflation in gold every year because you can always mine more gold. The unique and very, very cool thing about Bitcoin is that it not only is it scarce, but it's actually something that I would call absolutely scarce. It has this 21 million limit, and we can never exceed that limit. And this makes Bitcoin unique because it is the only asset in the whole world that will reach a 0% inflation, which means that Bitcoin actually literally is the most scarce asset on the planet. And this is something that I believe is going to become undeniable for people. And of course, scarcity isn't everything. Um, but Bitcoin, you could fill a whole list of different features in Bitcoin, properties of Bitcoin that are amazing. And just to name a few, I mean, it's decentralized, it has limited supply, and you can send it to anyone at any point in time over the borders. And the fees are very, very low when you send these enormous transactions. So, yeah, I can go on and on talking about the properties of Bitcoin, but basically, I think that Bitcoin is the best form of money out there, and I think that it is perfect as a hedge against the global markets because of all of its properties.
And when we look at the scarcity of Bitcoin, as you've mentioned, what kind of things, it's really hard to then value the price of Bitcoin if we look at it being the most scarce asset that is on the market at the moment. Do you have a valuation in your head for the price of Bitcoin?
So that's a very tough question because um, I think that, so first of all, I think that for sure the price of Bitcoin is much, much lower than the value of Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is very undervalued right now. The fact that you can send Bitcoin anywhere at any point in time and no one can censor this, no one can stop this, is such a huge thing. And there are still very, very few people that understand what Bitcoin is. Most people have heard about Bitcoin, but very, very few people understand what Bitcoin actually is and what it means for the economy potentially. I believe that Bitcoin is the best form of money in the world. And yeah, let's just take something to compare with. If we take gold, for example, gold's market cap is currently somewhere between I might be wrong, but somewhere between $8 and $10 trillion. And if Bitcoin were to obtain this market cap, which in my opinion is something that is very easily done for Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin deserves at least the market cap of gold. But that would put Bitcoin at somewhere between 350 up to maybe $450,000 per Bitcoin. But I think that we can look a little bit broader than that. And if you take a look at the whole pool of money, the pool of fiat money in the world, this pool of money is worth approximately 90 to $100 trillion. And like I said previously, I think Bitcoin is the best form of money in the world currently, better than gold, better than fiat. Fiat is a easy competition because, of course, fiat is a very, very bad store of value over time, and something that is a bad store of value cannot actually be considered money um, according to the definition of money. It has to hold value over time. And most fiat currencies have lost over 90% of their value over the course of their lifespan. And gold is of course, much better form of money than fiat because it holds value over time, and it has held its value for thousands of years, and it is limited in supply. It has a low inflation. But the fact that Bitcoin has all these properties that I talked about earlier leads me to believe that Bitcoin has the potential to become a widely adopted form of money in the world. And the reason why I believe that Bitcoin is a better form of money than gold is because of the fact that it's also digital. So Bitcoin has most of the properties that gold has that are good properties for a form of money. But where Bitcoin really stands out is where it is digital, because currently we have a digital world, a digital economy where most payments around the world are made in a digital way, at least here in the Western world, and we're going more and more towards this digital economy. And gold has been the best form of money for thousands of years, among hundreds of different forms of money. We've seen seashells being used as money. We've seen different stones being used as money, cigarettes, and you name it. Most things have at some point in time, in some local place, been used as money, and gold has by far been the best form of money. But in this digital world, I believe that Bitcoin stands out as the best form of money in the world. And so if Bitcoin were to take over this global money supply of 90 to $100 trillion, then we're looking for a Bitcoin price of somewhere between $4 to $5 million per Bitcoin. And obviously that is in today's purchasing power. So if Bitcoin were to take over this pool of money, then of course this means that the dollar has to collapse, so to speak. It has to inflate. And at that stage, one Bitcoin could be worth $15 trillion per Bitcoin, but it wouldn't really mean too much because the purchasing power of the dollar would have been reduced drastically. But in today's money, I do believe that Bitcoin could potentially reach a price of $4 to $5 million per Bitcoin.
Wow, and I think when we look at the future of the financial markets as well and the structure of the global economy, I think it's really important to closely monitor how things are going because, as you've said, a financial crisis or some form of issue where it would reshuffle the financial industry, that's really closely something to monitor. So if we look ahead now and we look at the Fed interest rates, for example, is that the kind of thing that would spur on this kind of price increase in Bitcoin?
So I think that the more we see central banks start to talk about interest rates cuts, which we are seeing a lot right now. Actually, just in the past few days, we've seen the ECB talk about lowering interest rates. We've seen the Federal Reserve announcing similar statements, and even the Bank of Japan. And we're seeing more and more of these signs that central banks are looking to lower interest rates. And in my opinion, that is a clear sign that these entities are preparing for the inevitable financial crisis that seems to be much more imminent now than just a few weeks ago. And I know that some or most media right now are basically blaming the coronavirus. And I just want to point out real quick that I think that the virus could very well trigger such an event. However, the fundamental reason of the coming financial crisis has nothing to do with any kind of virus or war or whatever. It is because of central banking, monetary policies, and the fact that debts have been rising all the time, and we've seen interest rates getting lower and lower, and global debt is on the rise all the time. And so the fundamentals of the banking system is the reason for why we need a correction soon, because we've seen central banks basically push up real estate and push up stock markets artificially, and at some point we are going to have to see this come down after seeing the central banks just kicking the can down the road for all these years. But I believe that Bitcoin has actually never been in or hasn't been widely traded during a financial crisis, and this is a interesting point because I mean, it is anyone's guess really what's going to happen in the next financial crisis to Bitcoin. But the more people start to talk about how central banks are manipulating the system, how they are just lowering interest rates and printing money out of thin air to quote unquote save the economy, the more attention will be put on Bitcoin as this safe haven and this alternative. So we have already seen how it is very, very bad to have a centralized economy. So I think that it is time for people to look towards something that is more decentralized, and obviously Bitcoin is the best solution. So I think that, yes, the more central banks manipulate the economy, the more attention Bitcoin will get, and the more liquidity will come into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin price will go up. So yes.
And you're right, it is a really interesting point because we've not seen this situation before. We saw that in 2008. That really spurred on the creation of Bitcoin, the evolution in Genesis block. We saw the headline title from the Times article in the US regarding quantitative easing being implemented. So it really spurred on this kind of Bitcoin revolution, and we've not actually seen the huge increased demand for it that we have seen for the reason that it was implemented. If we look for the Bitcoin calendar upcoming events, I think something that we have to acknowledge is the halving, which is coming up very soon. What kind of price upward trend are you expecting in the build up to then?
So I think that the halving is by far the biggest thing that is going to happen to Bitcoin in 2020. And as previously seen by the two previous halvings, the Bitcoin price has drastically gone up after the previous two halvings. So already by looking towards the history, we can see that there is already a strong argument where there is a logical reason for you to believe that the Bitcoin price is going to go up after the halving. But exactly how much and how quickly is very, very hard. Bitcoin has only been traded for approximately 11 years, and it's just not enough sample volume for us to predict the price accurately only based on the halving. But I once again want to point towards the fact that I think that these fundamentals of Bitcoin are going to become undeniable. The Bitcoin inflation will be cut in half very, very soon, in just a couple of months. But every 4 years from then on, it will be further cut in half. And this is something that is extraordinary and unique and never seen before. It is something that can only happen in the digital world. And it is the first time we have an asset that will actually reach 0%. So every halving, I think, just gives more and more attention to this fact. And this next halving will be no different. And well, I usually say on my channel, when I have the charts open, usually I see the trend, and I talk about the trend that it seems to me that Bitcoin is at least going to go to approximately $100,000 within 2-3 years after the halving, and it could top out somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 in the next big blow off top, just like the $20,000 top was the previous blow off top, and the $1,000 blow off top was the first blow off top in these 4-year cycles. And yeah, that is what I believe, and that's a big range. So somewhere between $100,000 and $400,000 basically is my price prediction. But it's not really price prediction because I mean it's very hard to pinpoint because yeah, the halving. If you have technical analysis and you have a triangle, then it's much easier to predict, okay, it's going to break out within this date and we're probably going to reach this target. But the halving is something that is much more diffuse and very hard to predict. But that's the best I can do.
That was good enough. That was fantastic. And I think there's so much that we can discuss with this as well. And I think this is a conversation that we're really excited to have in person as well. We'll welcome you to our AIBC Manila show in June. And we also have some people that you've collaborated with before that will also be attending. So I want to ask you what you find of crypto events, what kind of things you're looking forward to, and what kind of things delegates can expect to hear from you in Manila.
Yeah, so I love going to conferences, both for speaking, but also for networking and making business connections and just making new friends. And what I usually talk about on stage is Bitcoin and Bitcoin as a form of money, why I believe that Bitcoin is the best form of money in the world, and what I'm expecting of Bitcoin in the future. And I also usually compare Bitcoin with a few other forms of money out there. And yeah, I love talking about Bitcoin, as most people will know, because on my channel I make one video every single day where I basically talk about Bitcoin for 10 to 15 minutes. And so yeah, it is literally my job to talk about Bitcoin. And yeah, I just love doing it, and it's very cool that I'm getting the opportunity to do that once again in Manila at the conference.
We're super excited to have you there. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. We're going to go over and head over to your channel now to watch your daily Bitcoin video. But thanks for joining us. We'll be sure to catch up again soon, and we'll see you in Manila in June. So Carl, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Speak soon. Thank you.